greetings and thank you for being here. This video takes a quiet step into daily life in the Middle Ages, focusing on the steady routines of a castle guard during winter. Attention remains on the physical surroundings. Rather than dramatic events, what follows is a calm exploration of how ordinary duties continued in the cold season, where time passed through repeated movements, measured responsibilities, and the gradual rhythm of work and rest. The outer wall's stone continues holding on to the night's cold well after the sky starts to brighten. A thin and irregular film of frost clings across its surface, settling into the shallow cracks and worn edges that countless hands have touched through the years. Wind has shaped the snow into ridged drifts along the wall's base, moving freely across the open ground that extends beyond the castle. Inside the gate, the yard displays a different pattern altogether. The snow has been pressed into a hard and uneven crust by foot traffic, taking on a dull grey colour where ash and dirt have mixed through it. Each footstep makes a dry and compact sound, softer than what gravel would produce, yet sharper than bare earth. Light doesn't arrive all at once during this early hour. Instead, it gradually thins out the darkness and allows shapes to separate from each other. The towers are the first to rise, with their upper lines appearing faint against a sky that resembles watered milk. Shadow still holds the wooden hoardings along the parapet, giving their beams a darker tone than the stone supporting them below. A narrow path leads from the inner passage toward the stair that climbs up to the wall walk, cleared the day before. Its surface has frozen during the night. The ground there shows a smooth and pale appearance, requiring a careful tread to prevent slipping. Along the wall's length, air moves with steady consistency. It doesn't arrive in sudden gusts. What it does instead is press forward with a constant and quiet force, working its way through wool and leather and the small openings where clothing pieces overlap. Breath exits the mouth as visible streams, forming brief clouds that fade nearly at once. The morning carries a faint but distinct smell. Cold stone is present, along with old wood and the distant trace of smoke from banked fires deeper within the castle. No strong scent travels from beyond the walls. Snow and frozen ground hold smells downward, leaving the air spare and empty. In these conditions, sound travels in a different way. Frozen ground carries footsteps farther than soil would. When a hinge turns on the gate below, it produces a dull groan that seems closer than its actual location. Voices remain low and controlled when they're used. The air doesn't swallow them, though it doesn't invite them either. Most communication at this hour happens through gestures or brief words, exchanged without turning the head for long. Little movement exists in the outer yard. A cart stands positioned near the wall, with frost rimming its wheels and a stiffened cloth covering its bed. Buckets have been left near the well, turned upside down so snow can't fill them. The rope there has become rigid, its fibers darkened by frozen moisture. Below, a thin skin of ice has formed on the water, though it will be broken later when the day's use begins. Near the base of the wall, firewood waits in a stack under a slanted board. Snow has crept beneath the edge during the night, dusting the top layer of logs. The stair leading up to the wall walk is both narrow and steep. Long use has worn its steps into shallow curves at their centers. Snow has been pushed to the sides, but where boots have packed it down, a film of ice remains. The side rail becomes necessary for a hand, though the wood itself burns with cold. The parapet forms a low barrier above, its top capped with a line of snow that hasn't yet been disturbed. Beyond it, the land outside the castle spreads out in muted tones. The fields lie flat and pale, with boundaries marked only by faint lines where hedges or low walls break through the surface. A thin thread of road becomes visible, appearing darker where earth shows through. At this distance, no movement stands out. Stone makes up the wall walk, forming a long and narrow path that's uneven in places where blocks have settled over time. Snow gathers more thickly along the inner edge, where wind eddies and drops what it carries. The outer edge shows more bare stone, swept by the steady current of air because it's more exposed. Here and there, shallow puddles from the day before have frozen into cloudy patches. Boots pass over them carefully, with soles feeling for grip before weight settles down. Simple wooden posts support a roof over parts of the walk, offering slight shelter. The stone beneath these sections carries less snow, though dampness has darkened it. The beams above creak at intervals, not from sudden strain, but from the slow adjustment of wood contracting in the cold. Along their edges, a thin line of rime has formed, delicate and brittle in appearance. Along this stretch, the guard's immediate place is marked by habit rather than any sign. Between two towers, there's a section where the view extends across the approach road and over a shallow dip in the land beyond. From this position, the gate below can be seen in part, along with the yard inside where supplies are sometimes brought through. A narrow slit in the parapet allows a clearer angle outward, its sides smoothed by years of contact with sleeves and gloved hands. The body feels the cold in stages while standing there. First, it arrives at the face, where skin remains exposed. The nose and cheeks begin to tighten, and the tips of the ears grow dull. Then it reaches the hands, even within gloves, as fingers lose their quickness and become stiff. At first, feet feel solid, held firm by boots and wool wrappings. Over time, though, a deeper chill settles through the soles and rises slowly through the ankles. The cold doesn't stab. What it does is occupy, spreading with quiet persistence. The sky continues to lighten, though the sun itself remains hidden behind a low bank of cloud. Snow reflects light, giving both the yard and fields a flat brightness that carries no warmth. Shadows are soft and faint in appearance. The stone of the wall shows its varied surface now, with rough faces visible where blocks were split, and smoother areas where weather has worn them down. Small lichens cling in protected spots, their color muted under the frost. Occasional movement breaks through the stillness. Down in the yard below, a figure crosses with rounded shoulders, carrying a bundle of kindling toward an inner doorway. Steps are measured and placed with care. The sound reaches the wall as a muted crunch. From a nearby tower, another guard shifts position, the scrape of a boot sole against stone, followed by stillness again. These are small adjustments, part of how the morning slowly arranges people into their places. The wind along the wall doesn't vary in its direction. It comes across the open land and meets the stone with steady pressure, then spills over and down into the yard in a gentler flow. Where it meets the towers, it divides and creates narrow streams of air that move along the walk. In some spots, it eases up, allowing a thin layer of warmth from the body to gather within clothing. A step or two away, it returns with full force and undoes that small comfort. At the parapet edge, snow shows delicate patterns shaped overnight. Fine ridges run parallel, marking where grains of ice have been pushed and lifted by the wind. A gloved hand resting there leaves a clear print, with dark stone showing through. Drifting crystals begin to soften the mark's edges within minutes. The ditch that circles part of the castle is partly filled with snow below the wall. Its depth is less apparent now, with slopes smoothed into gentle curves. Near the bottom, a few dark reeds protrude where water hasn't fully frozen. The outer ground near the walls shows no tracks this morning. The surface remains unbroken, forming a continuous pale field that reveals any movement clearly when it comes. Time moves without distinct markers at this hour. There's no bell and no call. Change is measured in light and in how the body slowly adjusts to the cold. More figures gradually appear in the yard, each one moving with purpose, yet without haste. A door opens and closes. Further inside, a small plume of smoke thickens from a chimney, rising straight for a short distance before bending with the wind. The stone beneath the guard's feet leaches warmth steadily. Its chill is constant even through layered soles. A slight shifting of stance redistributes pressure, but doesn't alter the temperature. Sometimes hands come together briefly, with fingers pressing into opposite palms. Then return to rest along the parapet or at the belt. Movements remain minimal, conserving effort and keeping balance on the uneven and slick surface. The cloud cover holds firm above. The light remains diffuse without any glare. Where land and sky meet, the horizon line forms a soft band without sharp contrast. At a distance, details stay blurred by the thin haze of cold air. Nearer objects appear with quiet clarity. The wall stones, wooden beams, and packed snow of the yard. In this space between full dark and full day, the castle's outer face presents itself plainly. Stone, wood, and iron fittings on the gate all bear the same condition imposed by winter. Surfaces are rigid. Moisture is locked in place. Sound is spare. Movement is measured. The guard's presence is one part of this arrangement, set along the wall as steadily as the parapet itself. Nothing calls for haste. Nothing invites rest. Cold air, pale light, and the long line of stone extending in both directions along the wall define the surroundings and remain constant. Waking doesn't come from full rest, but from a gradual return to awareness of the cold. During the night, the air in the sleeping space has thinned as the small fire in the brazier burned low and settled into ash. Stone walls hold that chill and return it slowly. Before the eyes open, the body already knows the temperature has dropped. Inside the blanket, breath has made a pocket of faint warmth, and leaving it requires a brief stillness in which the change is accepted. The room is shared, long and narrow in shape, set against an inner wall where little daylight reaches during winter. Both sides are lined with wooden pallets, raised slightly above the floor on simple frames. Straw fills the sacks that serve as mattresses, compressed unevenly from use. Some blankets are patched, lying folded or pulled close around shoulders. Through a narrow slit window set high, a faint grey light reaches in, enough to separate shapes, but not to show detail. The air carries the smell of wool, old wood, and cooled ash. Movement begins quietly. One figure shifts, drawing knees in before sitting up. In a low and habitual sound, another clears the throat. No one rises quickly, in slow motions that keep hands within warmth as long as possible. Blankets are folded back, wrapped overnight in strips of cloth. Feet touch the floor with care. The stone there is colder than the air. A pause follows as souls adjust to it. Clothing waits close at hand, arranged the previous evening with an order that reduces effort in the morning. The low temperature that has settled into the fibers makes linen underlayers so stiff with cold, not from damp. They are drawn on without delay, Woolen hose follow, pulled high and tied securely. Over the head, a tunic goes on, thick enough to hold warmth yet worn thin at elbows and cuffs. A heavier wool garment is added over this, its weight familiar on the shoulders. Near each pallet, belts lie coiled. Pouches hang from them, along with a small knife and simple tools. Each item has its place. At first, fingers work buckles with reduced dexterity. The leather feels unyielding until body heat begins to soften it. Near the wall, boots stand with their surfaces dull from repeated oiling. Inside, dried grass has been placed to hold shape and absorb moisture. That stuffing is shaken out and replaced if needed. Then feet slide in with toes pressing forward to settle. Along the wall, cloaks hang on pegs with edges brushing one another. They are taken down and fastened at the shoulder or throat. Wool's weight adds immediate insulation, though the face and hands remain exposed. Gloves are last, tucked into belts until the moment of stepping outside, so fingers can finish small tasks without obstruction. Speech is limited to brief exchanges. One word about the hour, another about frost on the stair, and nothing more. Voices stay low, shaped by the enclosed space and the shared understanding that noise isn't required. One of the older guards moves toward the brazier and stirs the ash with an iron rod. Beneath the grey, a small red glow appears. A piece of kindling is added, then another. Flame doesn't leap up, but a faint warmth begins to return, enough to soften the air nearest the coals. By the door, water in a bucket shows a thin skin of ice. It's broken with the handle of a ladle. Hands are dipped briefly, more to clear sleep than to clean. The shock of cold is sharp and brief, leaving skin alert and slightly numb. A cloth is used to wipe faces, stiffening again as soon as it leaves the water. When ready, each guard checks what must be carried. Against the wall, a short spear or polearm rests with its shaft smooth from long handling. At the belt, a dagger sits. Some carry a horn for signalling, though it's used rarely in winter unless needed. These items are lifted without display. Their weight is part of the day's balance. Outside the sleeping space, the passage is narrow and dim. To conserve material, torches aren't kept burning here in daylight hours. At the far end, light from the yard filters in as a pale rectangle that draws the eye. On the stone floor, steps echo lightly. The cold in the corridor matches that of the room, though a faint current of air moves toward the outer door. As the door opens, the morning air enters fully. It meets the warmer breath from inside and forms a brief mist. Cloaks are drawn closer. Fingers push into familiar shapes as gloves go on now. The yard beyond is brighter than the corridor. though still under cloud. Upward, snow reflects light, making the space seem open despite the enclosing walls. Others have already used the path toward the stair. Footprints overlap and create a firm track. On the frozen sections, care is taken. For balance, one hand may brush the wall with leather against stone. The surface underfoot alternates between packed snow and exposed patches where previous traffic has scraped down to ice. Through the yard, other early risers move with similar purpose. Toward a side door, a kitchen worker crosses while carrying a sack. A stable hand leads a horse carefully, with its breath visible and hooves placed with attention. Beyond a nod, these movements intersect without delay or greeting. Each person follows a routine shaped by the same conditions. At the wall stair's base, the angle upward is clear. Where melt and refreeze have occurred, the steps hold a thin glaze. A guard ahead ascends steadily with boots placed flat to gain grip. Despite its cold, the handrail is used with fingers closing firmly around it. The climb warms the body slightly, deepening breath and building a small heat under the layers of wool. At the top, the wall walk opens into the wind again. From sheltered passage to exposed height, the transition is immediate. Against the cloak, air presses, finding seams and edges. At once, the face cools. Against the brightness of snow beyond the parapet, eyes narrow slightly. Before taking position, there's a brief exchange with the guard coming off duty. It's short and practical. About ice near the tower corner, a note is made. That the road remained empty through the last watch is mentioned, no elaboration follows. With measured steps, the departing figure descends the stair. Shoulders slightly lowered now that movement will replace stillness. Along the assigned stretch, the new watch settles into place. Not struck down, the spear butt rests lightly on stone. Hands adjust the cloak so it falls evenly, covering the sides where wind enters most easily. To keep balance on uneven ground, feet are set shoulder-width apart. From this point, the day's standing begins. Between warmth and cold, early preparation leaves the body in a state. The climb has brought a mild heat that slowly fades as stillness takes over. Inside gloves, fingers flex once to test motion. In a steady rhythm of breath that sends small clouds into the air, shoulders rise and fall. Toward the visible stretch of land beyond the wall, the mind narrows. Yet awareness of the body remains close, noting where fabric presses or where cold finds a path inward. Within the castle behind, more signs of day gather. With a dull thud, a door closes. From kitchen fires, smoke thickens and takes on a darker tone. Somewhere below, wood is being split with each strike, carrying up in a muted and regular beat. Without demanding attention, these sounds form a background that continues. Preparation for duty ends not with the signal, but with the absence of further tasks. Clothing is in place, weapons are held. The path has been walked. From here, fully into watching and remaining, the guard's role shifts. The earlier motions of dressing and moving fall away, replaced by the steady requirement to stand, to look outward, and to hold position as the winter morning advances without haste. Into stillness deeper than quiet movement, but not complete absence of action, the first stretch of watch settles. Weight distributed evenly between both feet, the body remains upright with knees unlocked to avoid stiffness setting too quickly. A cold that does not lessen with time is held by the stone beneath the boots. In a slow and constant way, it seeps upward, pressing through leather soles and wool wrappings, until the feet feel dense and heavy, as if the ground itself has risen into them. In positions that change little, hands rest. Over the other, at the top of the spear shaft, one may lie, or the wood may be held lightly. By both, with fingers, curved but not tight. The sense of touch is dulled by gloves. Yet the texture of the shaft is still known. Where it has been handled most, small ridges and smooth sections mark it. More to keep blood moving than from need, the grip shifts slightly now and then. These movements are minimal and contained within the space close to the body. Its steady passage along the wall is maintained by the wind. It does not howl or whistle. With a low and continuous pressure that presses cloth against limbs and then pulls it away again, it moves. At the hem, the cloak lifts faintly and settles. At the shoulders and chest, where layers overlap, warmth gathers for a time. Cold threads its way in along the sides and at the back of the neck, persistent and fine. The most exposed part remains the face. Sensation is lost gradually in the cheeks, and at the tip of the nose a constant and dull sting is carried that fades into numbness. Outward across the pale land beyond the walls, vision extends. Most surfaces are covered by snow, smoothing edges and reducing contrast. Familiar shapes appear simplified. Low fences, scattered trees, shallow dips in the ground, with their details hidden under the uniform layer. Where passage has disturbed the snow, the road approaching the castle shows darker bands, but no new marks appear. Along this path, the eye moves repeatedly, not in sharp sweeps, but in slow and habitual passes that take in the same ground again and again. In one place, attention does not fix. In a pattern shaped by routine, it travels. First outward, across the fields and road, then downward toward the ditch below the wall, where snow has drifted into gentle curves. Then sideways along the wall walk to the next tower, where another figure stands in similar stillness. Long is not how these glances linger. That all remains as before is what they confirm, and then outward the gaze returns. The sense of time is altered by cold. Moments do not separate clearly without active movement. As cloud cover keeps the sky even and pale, there is no strong change in light. Instead, in the body, time is felt. Stiffer is how fingers grow, then they are flexed. Inside boots, toes press downward, seeking sensation. In a deeper breath, shoulders rise slightly, then ease again. A passage is marked by each of these small adjustments, though no measure is spoken. Steady and visible, breathing remains. A brief cloud that drifts sideways and vanishes is formed by each exhale. Before it reaches the lungs, inhaling through cloth at the collar warms the air slightly. Part of the background becomes the rhythm of breath, as constant as the wind. At the center of the body, it helps maintain a slow warmth, even as extremities cool. Spare but clear is sound at this hour. Within the castle yard, muted activity continues. A hollow knock is produced by a bucket set down. Before being eased closed, a door hinge gives a short and rough note. Along the stone, these sounds rise and reach the wall walk without distortion. Beyond the walls, there is little. A distant crow calls now and then, its voice thin in the cold air. The call does not echo. It arrives and is gone. Attention of its own is required by standing still. To maintain balance on the uneven surface, muscles along the legs and back work quietly. In places, the wall walk slopes slightly, and careful footing is demanded by patches of ice. From heel to toe and back again, weight shifts in slow cycles that are almost imperceptible from outside. Joints are kept from locking by these shifts, and the deeper ache that can settle when motion stops entirely is reduced. More than a tool is what the spear serves as. A point of contact with the ground that helps steady the body is provided by it. Against stone, its butt rests lightly, not enough to scrape or sound. Through it, faint vibrations can sometimes be felt. Distant movement in the yard below, a cartwheel turning, a door closing with force. Subtle and not always noticed is what these sensations are, but another layer of awareness is formed by them. Despite gloves, cold reaches the hands. Quickness is lost first by fingers, then distinct sensation at the tips. To counter this, the spear may be briefly released by one hand and pressed against the other, palm to palm, creating friction. Slow and contained is the motion, not drawing attention. After a few breaths, to its place the hand returns. At intervals, such gestures occur, spaced so they do not become constant movement. Forward is where the face remains most of the time, but often the eyes move. The line where land meets sky is traced by them, a pale boundary softened by haze. The edge of the ditch below is followed by them, noting where snow has fallen in and where dark shapes of reeds show through. Again to the road they return, marking the same bends and rises. New information is not brought by this repeated looking, yet readiness is maintained, keeping the mind aligned with the surroundings. Little changes shown by clouds overhead. A uniform grey is their underside, brighter near the horizon. Only by a slight thinning of light in one direction can the sun's position be guessed. From it, there is no direct warmth. From the snow into the eyes, light reflects, causing a mild strain that leads to slower blinking and narrowed lids. Around the chest and abdomen, where layers are thickest, warmth concentrates within the body. From there, it fades outward. Slowly inward, the boundary between warm and cold shifts as time passes. To slow this, once in a small motion, shoulders roll, and more fully, the back straightens. Closer is how fabric is drawn, and a pocket of air is trapped. After a while, the effect lessens, and its gradual advance is resumed by the cold. Along the wall nearby, similar small movements are performed by the other guard. A slight bend of the knees. To adjust the edge of a hood, a hand raised briefly. Without signal and without comment, these actions occur. Their own balance against the cold is maintained by each person, yet the same pattern shaped by the conditions is followed by all. Carrying a long pole between them, a pair of figures cross the yard below. On the packed snow, their steps are deliberate. Once, the pole's end brushes the ground, sending up a faint spray of powder. As a soft scrape, the sound reaches the wall. Without turning fully, the guards on the walk note the movement, eyes shifting downward and then back outward. Part of the normal flow within the walls is such activity. Absence of work is not what stillness on watch means. Outward, attention remains extended, even as energy is conserved by the body. To irregular sounds, ears stay open. Against the pale field beyond, eyes scan for motion. A quiet readiness that does not rise to tension but does not fade into ease is held by the mind. Over long stretches, it is a level state maintained. After time, cold in the feet deepens. To counter this, slightly inside boots, heels lift, then settle again. Toes curl and release. By the still stance above, these motions are hidden. Without shifting the guard's visible position, they keep blood moving. If the surface allows, from one foot to the other, weight may transfer briefly, then return to balance. Stiff with frost along the hem, the cloak's edge brushes against the back of the legs when the wind shifts. To the fabric, small crystals cling, catching the light faintly before falling away. Along the upper edge of the cloak or collar, where breath has touched, a trace of moisture has frozen, forming a thin crust that cracks softly when the cloth moves. In these small cycles of sensation and adjustment, time passes. Between one part of the watch and the next, there is no clear boundary. Steady is what the environment remains. Pale light, low wind, unbroken snow beyond the walls. Against the stone parapet, the guard's body upright becomes another fixed element in this winter arrangement, defined by endurance of cold, by measured breathing, and by the repeated and careful sweep of the gaze across the same quiet land. Through small patterns rather than open display, hierarchy among the guards shows itself. In an obvious way, no marks on clothing set one apart. In where a person stands, how others turn toward him when instructions are needed, and who speaks first when a decision must be made, differences appear. Through repetition of duty, seasons of service, and the memory of who has stood longest on these walls, these arrangements have formed over time. A senior guard, assigned responsibility for a stretch of wall, and the men placed along it, is at the head of the watch. In distance, his position is not separate, yet a different weight is carried by it. At measured intervals along the wall walk, he moves, not frequently, but often enough that each post is checked. Even is his pace, with boots placed carefully on the worn stone and one hand sometimes brushing the parapet as he passes narrower sections. Near a guard, when he pauses, the exchange is brief and quiet. About footing where ice has formed, a word. Of a patrol's expected time below, a reminder. Far is not how these words carry, and they do not need to. Without formal sign, those who have served longer are recognized. An economy shaped by years of the same tasks is shown by their movements. Where snow gathers most deeply on the wall walk, where wind cuts hardest between towers, and which stair treads hold ice even when others have cleared, they know. These patterns are watched by younger or newer guards and followed. Without direct statement, instruction often comes. Toward a drifted section of parapet, a glance may lead a newer man to clear it with his boot before being told. In a steady line from the castle's inner authority, order passes downward, though already shaped into simple directions, is much of it when it reaches the wall. Due to worsening cold, a change in shift length. That more firewood will be brought to the guardroom, a notice. By a messenger or by the senior guard returning from within, such information is carried. Without breaking stance, more than necessary when he speaks, others listen. A nod answers, and into routine the message settles. Little need for raised voices exists. Loud command, unnecessary in ordinary times, is made by the closeness of service and the constancy of the work. Even is what tone remains. For clarity, rather than force, words are chosen. Free of sharp sound is what this manner keeps the air along the wall, fitting the steady rhythm of the watch. By shared exposure, relationships among the guards are shaped. In the same wind, all stand. The same cold entering through cloth and leather is felt by all. Differences that might show more clearly elsewhere are narrowed by this common condition. During moments of relief or at the edge of a shift change when it occurs, conversation tends to stay close to immediate matters. The state of the stair, the thickness of ice near the well, the quality of bread issued that morning. Without drawing attention, these exchanges build familiarity. Through repeated observation of one another's steadiness, trust forms. Quiet regard is earned by a guard who remains alert during long and uneventful hours. Relied upon becomes one who reports small changes accurately, without exaggeration. Over time, these traits are noted. In writing, no record is kept, yet they are held by memory. Along the wall, when positions are assigned, who is placed at more exposed stretches, and who at sheltered corners is influenced by such memory. For warmth or ease, the senior guard does not stand apart. Along the wall, like the others, he takes his place, though brief periods of circulation that ease the cold in his limbs are given him by his movement between posts. Part of his duty, rather than a privilege, is this movement. The condition of each section of the wall, the state of the men, and the environment beyond are what it allows him to see. Also within the group, pairs or small clusters who have served together for longer periods exist. In subtle ways, their coordination shows. To restore feeling to a foot when one shifts stance, a little farther the other's gaze extends, covering both fields of view. Along the wall, walk when a patrol returns. Briefly, two men may exchange positions to balance exposure to wind. Without formal arrangement, these actions occur, shaped instead by habit and awareness of one another's limits. In a low voice and without display when needed, correction is given. Too long toward the yard instead of outward, if a guard's attention drifts, his gaze is brought back by a passing word. On an icy patch, if footing is careless, a brief caution is offered. Quickly, such moments pass and do not linger. To maintain the steady functioning of the watch, not to mark fault, is the purpose. To those who manage stores, fires, and provisions for the guards, beyond the wall walk, the structure of authority continues downward. First to the senior guard, messages about ration changes or fuel allotment reach, then pass along. During shift relief, when men gather briefly near the stair, he may repeat them. Through the group in a controlled flow. In this way, information spreads, reducing uncertainty that could distract from the work. Also, indecisions about shelter during severe weather, during winter hierarchy shows. If wind strengthens or heavily snow begins to fall, positions may be adjusted by the senior guard, allowing those at the most exposed points to rotate through more sheltered sections for short periods. Aimed at preserving strength across the whole watch, these decisions are practical. With him, the authority to make them rests. Though mindful, he remains of orders received from within the castle. Also, by this structure, meals and brief warming periods are shaped, to allow a guard to step down for food or to stand near a brazier when relief comes. An understood sequence is followed by the order of movement. When possible, those who have stood longest without break go first. This flow is overseen by the senior guard, ensuring thinly watched is not how any section of wall is left. Plain is what daily interaction remains despite these layers of order. Beyond the simple exchange of position, there is no ceremony to mark the beginning or end of a shift. Any needed note about the hours past is shared by the departing guard. The arriving guard listens and takes his place. Where hierarchy and routine meet, this exchange forms a point, where without pause in the overall watch, information passes and responsibility changes hands. The quiet tone of the wall is not altered by the presence of hierarchy. Beneath the surface of the day, it operates, guiding movement and decision, so that little needs to be said aloud. His place along the line, the direction from which instruction comes, and the small sphere of judgment allowed to him within his post, each guard knows. Uncertainty is reduced by this shared understanding, and steady the work is kept even in the slow and draining conditions of winter. At intervals along the wall, as hours pass, the senior guard's figure appears, moving with the same measured pace. Neither hurried nor delayed are his visits. To the watch, they provide a subtle rhythm, points at which slightly posture straightens and attention sharpens before settling again into its steady state. After on he moves to its prior quiet, the pattern returns. Into the fabric of the day in this way, relationships within the guard are woven, with the physical demands of cold, height, and stillness, authority, experience, and habit align. Out is not how any single element stands. Instead, the continued presence of each man at his place along the wall, is supported by the structure, maintaining an unbroken line of watchfulness that around the castle extends through the long winter hours. A pattern that repeats each day with only small adjustments for weather and available strength is what the organization of the watch follows. Into stretches long enough to make full use of each guard's presence on the wall, yet short enough to prevent complete loss of feeling in hands and feet. Time is divided. At every change, these stretches are not marked by bells. Instead, by habit, by the senior guard's sense of the passing hours, and by the visible movement of light across stone. When the sky allows, the rhythm is kept. Along a defined section of wall at the start of a watch period, each man is placed. By the layout of towers, stairs, and the line of sight outward, these sections are shaped. The space between two towers or the area beside a gatehouse where movement below is more frequent may be what a post includes. Through the watch, unless conditions require change, the assignment remains stable. At measured intervals along the wall, patrol movement occurs. To observe both the men and the surroundings, a single guard, often the senior, walks the length of the assigned stretch. At one tower, his route begins, follows the parapet to the next, and returns the same way. Neither brisk nor slow, the pace is steady, chosen to keep footing secure on stone that may hold ice or patches of wet snow. The fixed watch at each post is not replaced by this patrol. A layer of oversight is added by it, and connected along the line, awareness is kept. The spacing of these patrols is altered by winter. The ease of movement is reduced by cold, and the need to conserve warmth increases. As a result, fewer but still regular are the patrols. Between them, without expectation of frequent company, each guard maintains his own watch. Greater in winter, the distance between posts feels, not because space changes, but because less common along it is movement, so that not all guards move at once. Shift changes are arranged. Continuously watched, the wall is kept by a staggered pattern. While others remain, one man is relieved. The stair is climbed by the relieving guard. A brief word from the one stepping down is received, and his place is taken. Quick is the exchange, keeping exposure at the stair minimal, where footing is often worst. Carefully, the departing guard descends, legs stiff from standing, movements deliberate to avoid slipping. By the wall's structure, the path of patrol is shaped. At towers, slightly the walkway widens, offering a place to pause and look in multiple directions. From these points, at different angles, the land outside can be seen, and through gaps between buildings, the inner yard comes into view, only long enough to confirm that all remains in order does the patrol linger before moving on. In the yard or near gates below the wall, complementary patrols may occur, but the wall watch is not directly altered by these unless a message must be passed. When such a message comes, the stair is ascended by a runner and delivered to the senior guard or the nearest post, who then ensures it reaches the rest. Direct is what this system keeps communication, and unnecessary movement is reduced. More care is demanded by certain stretches of wall in winter. Where wind strikes directly, corners gather ice along the parapet edge. Near drains, sections may hold thin layers of water that freeze quickly. These spots are noted by the patrol and, when possible, scraped with a boot edge or signaled for sand or ash to be brought up later. Part of maintaining safe passage along the route are these actions. In the body, rather than counted aloud, the length of a watch period is felt. When the time approaches for relief, slightly in expectation of movement, attention sharpens. That change is near is signaled by the sound of steps on the stair below. Until that moment, steady posture remains, outward gaze, lightly grounded spear. Also, to check for signs beyond the usual view, patrol patterns serve. At certain points, slightly over the parapet, the senior guard may lean to see the base of the wall more clearly, watching for disturbance in the snow or unusual marks near the ditch. Brief and controlled are these checks, avoiding overexposure to the drop or to wind. As snow accumulates faster than it can be cleared during heavier snowfall, patrol paths narrow. In single-file tracks along the wall, guards then walk. Steps placed in existing prints to reduce effort and slipping. In roughly the same places, the fixed posts remain, but more defined and limited the path between them becomes. Further, the pattern is altered by night, but during the winter day, the slowness imposed by cold is the main difference. That might be quicker in milder seasons. Movements are measured now. Before leaving his post, a guard setting out on patrol ensures his cloak is settled and gloves secure. Near the parapet or spear, he keeps one hand as he moves, using contact with stone or wood to steady himself on uncertain footing. The same structured flow is followed by relief from the wall for brief warming. At a time when permitted, one guard steps down, often after a patrol has confirmed all is steady. Limited is the time away, just enough to stand near a brazier or take warm food. The stair is ascended by the returning guard and his place resumed, and only then does the next step down. Unbroken is what this sequence keeps the line of watch. On each guard, knowing not only his own post, but the general layout of the entire stretch, the system depends. In case a man must leave unexpectedly, the gap can be covered by another shifting until formal relief comes. Quietly, such adjustments happen with a glance or short word exchanged as positions change. Continuity is maintained by the watch through these routines. At regular intervals with figures, the wall remains lined, their presence steady against the pale winter light. Along the stone, at measured times, patrols pass, linking each post into a single working unit, without gathering crowds or leaving spaces empty. Shift changes occur. Into the larger pattern fits every movement, shaped by the structure of the castle and the demands of cold, height, and long hours. By storage, preservation, and the need to provide steady strength rather than variety, food during the cold months follows a pattern shaped. At fixed ceremonial hours, meals do not arrive. Instead, around the demands of the watch, they are fitted, brought when relief can be arranged without thinning the wall. As another part of duty is how eating is treated, approached with the same quiet efficiency as taking up a post. After the first long stretch on the wall for a guard on day watch, the main meal often comes. When relief is signalled, carefully the stair is descended by the guard, legs slow to bend after standing. An immediate change is brought by the passage from exposed air to the inner yard. Wind lessens, and clearer becomes the smell of cooking. The scent of boiled grain and broth is carried by smoke from the kitchen chimney. Heavier in winter when hot food is needed. Not separate or elaborate is the place where guards take their food. A corner of a hall near the kitchens, a small room with benches, or even a sheltered space near a brazier if time is short, it may be. At the doorway, snow is stamped from boots, leaving damp marks that freeze again if not wiped. On cloaks remain, though at the throat they are loosened. Simple and consistent are the rations. The base is formed by a bowl of thick pottage, made from barley, oats, or peas, cooked long with whatever dried vegetables are available. When stores allow in winter, bits of salted meat may be added, lending a deeper taste and added strength. Hot enough to send steam upward in visible curls is the broth. Through the wood or clay, holding the bowl warms the hands, heat passing into stiff fingers. The pottage is accompanied by bread, often dark and dense, made from mixed grains. Firm is its crust, sometimes hard in the cold air, but it softens when dipped into the broth. Steadily, each piece is eaten, not rushed, but without lingering. By easing slightly, the body responds to the warmth. First to the hands as the bowl is held, sensation returns, then to the face as steam brushes the skin. At warmth rather than refreshment in winter, drinks aim. A mug of weak ale may be given, or heated water flavoured lightly with herbs if available. In slow mouthfuls, the liquid is taken, the heat travelling down into the chest and spreading outward. Brief but noticeable is the effect, a small counter to the cold waiting outside. Low and practical during meals, conversation remains. About the state of the wall, a word. That more ash should be spread on a slippery stair, a note. Into long talk, these exchanges do not extend. Limited is time, and to restore warmth and strength is the purpose of the break. Once the bowl is empty and the drink finished, the guard stands, adjusts his belt and cloak, and prepares to return. In this sheltered setting, not all food is taken. During long watches, in a pouch, small pieces of bread or dried cheese may be carried. On the wall, during quieter moments, these are eaten, hands briefly leaving the spear to break off a piece. Cold and firm is the food, but substance it provides. Care is required for eating in the wind. For a moment, gloves may be pulled off, fingers working quickly before being covered again. An important part of rations, fat, becomes in deeper winter. Help maintain strength against the cold do bits of salted pork or rendered fat mixed into pottage. Not for taste alone, but for the steady heat they provide within the body are such additions valued. Not immediate warmth, but a slower and longer support that reduces shivering during the next stretch of stillness is the effect. Closely by those in charge of stores, the supply of food is watched. Aware of this are the guards, though the full measure they do not see. When rations grow slightly smaller, without open complaint, it is noted. Thinner bread may be cut, broth stretched with more grain and less meat. As part of winter's demands, these changes are accepted. A contrast is brought by returning to the wall after eating. The brief warmth gathered indoors meets the cold air and thins quickly. More strongly for a few minutes, steam from breath appears as the body releases the heat just gained. Tight again are cloaks pulled, back over fingers, gloves are settled. Up the spear is taken, and the post resumed. Not through variety, but through timing and warmth, eating shapes the day. A marker in the otherwise even flow of hours is provided by each meal or small ration. A point where directly the body is tended is offered, where from outside, rather than being drawn from stored strength, heat and substance enter. Without sharp decline, this support allows the guard to maintain the long stillness of winter watch. With little change, the cycle repeats. Brought, eaten, and finished is food. Returned are bowls, benches cleared. Into the wind and pale light, the guard steps back, carrying within him the brief warmth of broth and the steady weight of bread. Beneath the work of standing, watching, and enduring the cold along the castle walls, these simple provisions, taken at measured times, form a quiet foundation. Limited and used with care are sources of warmth during winter duty. Along the wall walk, open fires are not kept, where wind would scatter sparks and smoke would hinder sight. Instead, in smaller and controlled ways that fit within the structure of the watch, warmth is found. The cold is not removed by these sources. Briefly, it is eased, allowing the body to hold its strength through long hours. In certain sheltered spaces inside the walls, braziers stand, often near stair bases or in guardrooms set against thicker stone. Charcoal or well-burned wood that gives steady heat with little flame is held by these containers. Low, the glow inside them remains, a bed of red that can be stirred back to life when needed. Near them during brief relief, guards step, turning hands toward the heat with palms open, then rotating them to warm the backs of fingers. Only a short distance is reached by the warmth from a brazier, close enough that the front of the body feels heat while the back remains cool. One must stand. Not removed fully are cloaks, but to let warmth reach inner layers, edges may be parted. After a few minutes, to fingers and cheeks sensation returns. As feeling comes back, the skin may tingle. Before the heat becomes too strong or time runs short, away the guard steps, letting the cloak settle again. Another form of warmth is offered by shared cloaks. Thicker than others are some, woven from denser wool or lined with additional cloth. In a sheltered corner during a short pause when two guards stand, around both shoulders, briefly one cloak may be drawn. Not for long is this arrangement, only enough to share retained body heat. Without comment, it is done, a simple adjustment to conditions. Slight relief is provided by corners of the wall where wind is blocked by tower bulk. Less direct exposure is held by the stone there, and differently snow gathers, forming drifts that act as a barrier at ankle height. In such spots for a few breaths, guards passing on patrol may pause, turning their backs to the open land and letting the wall take the wind's force. Brief is the pause, measured against the need to continue movement. Through small practices, hand warmth is managed. Into palms, when not needed for grip, fingers are curled. Into armpits for a moment during safe pauses, hands are tucked, using body heat to restore feeling. From melted frost, when gloves grow damp, near a brazier, when possible, they are dried, then return to use before stiffness sets in. Also from movement, heat comes, though on watch movement is limited. The climb of stairs, the slow pace of patrol, and the simple act of shifting stance all create small warmth within muscles. Not as exercise, but as necessary motion within duty are these treated. Beyond distance, Each step taken along the wall carries value, helping to keep blood moving. As stored warmth, clothing itself acts. Air that the body heats gradually is trapped by layers. During the day, guards adjust these layers, loosening a tie if heat builds during movement, tightening it again when returning to stillness. To cover more of the neck, the collar of a cloak may be raised. When worn, ears and the back of the head, areas where cold enters easily, are shielded by a hood. When longer relief is allowed inside the guardroom, heat from a larger hearth may be available. More openly here, wood burns, sending stronger warmth across the space. Near it in turns, guards stand or sit, boots extended slightly toward the fire to dry damp leather. Not to overheat or let clothing scorch. Care is taken. Limited is time near this stronger heat. As their turn, others wait. Also, a part is played by warmth from food and drink. Slowly outward, the heat taken in during meals spreads, supporting the body from within. Alongside external sources, this internal warmth works, though as the hours pass, it fades. Before it is fully gone, to the wall the guard returns, carrying its effect into the next stretch of watch. A slight change is offered by even small sun exposure, when clouds thin. On stone, a patch of light falling can warm the surface just enough to be felt through boots or gloves resting on the parapet. These spots are noted by guards, and they may stand where such light reaches, though modest and short-lived in winter is the effect. Not comforts in a full sense are these forms of warmth. To maintain the ability to stand, to watch, and to move when required, they are tools used against time and duty. Each is measured, taken in small portions, and then left behind. The main condition remains the cold, but from overcoming the body too quickly, these steady and careful practices prevent it. Immediate is the return to exposed air after each brief contact with heat. Close cloaks, back on spear or parapet hands settle, and along the wall, his place the guard resumes. For a short while, in the fingers and chest, the memory of warmth lingers, then fades into the background, as again the steady winter air presses in. Where space allows within the inner walls, living quarters for the guards are placed, often along less travelled passages, or against thick outer stone that blocks some wind. Beyond necessity, these areas are not built for comfort. As places to sleep, store personal items, and spend short periods when off duty, they serve. In winter, in shelter from the open air rather than warmth itself, their main value lies. By many, the room is usually shared. The walls are lined by pallets, arranged close enough that narrow and careful is movement between them. not by name but by habit. Each sleeping place is marked. To the same space each day, a man returns, where his blanket, spare wrappings, and small belongings remain waiting. Stone is what the floor is made of, uneven in places where age has shifted the blocks, with scattered rushes or straw laid down to soften the surface and absorb damp from boots that have tracked through snow and ice. Through narrow openings set high in the wall, light enters during daylight hours. Pale daylight but little direct sun in winter is admitted by these slits, which were cut more for ventilation than illumination. Cool the air inside remains, though less sharp than on the wall where wind cuts without obstruction. A brazier or small hearth may be present, its use shared among all, and fuel measured carefully to last through the coldest hours. Through a vent or small flue, smoke escapes, leaving a faint scent that over time settles into cloth and hair, becoming part of the guard's constant presence that others can detect even at a distance. Few and kept close are personal items. A spare pair of hose, perhaps worn thin at the knees from kneeling on stone. A needle and thread for repairs that cannot wait. Perhaps a wooden comb with several teeth missing, or a small token carried for many years, smoothed by handling until its original shape has softened. In pouches hung from wall pegs, simple chests shared between two men, or wrapped in cloth and tucked beneath the pallet, where they won't be disturbed. These objects are stored. Order matters greatly, as limited is space and confusion wastes precious time when shifts change, and men must dress quickly in the dim light before dawn arrives. Further than on the wall, when off duty, a guard's movements slow. Removed and set near the heat source to dry are boots, positioned carefully so the leather doesn't crack from too much direct heat. From the feet, wrappings, uppings are unwound and checked for dampness or wear that might cause blisters or loss of feeling in the cold. If dry material is available from the stores, they are replaced with care, the old wrappings set aside for washing when weather permits. In silence or with low words that barely carry across the room, these tasks are done, hands working steadily even when stiff are fingers from hours of exposure to winter wind. To benches along the walls or the edge of a pallet, sitting space is limited. Close to one another guards sit, through layers of wool shoulders sometimes touching, without being remarked upon or drawing attention. This closeness shares warmth. On May remain cloaks, loosened at the throat but not set aside entirely. As fully warm in winter, the room never grows, even with the brazier glowing steadily in its corner. During these off-duty times, interactions with others inside the castle occur, with empty tubs that need refilling, kitchen workers pass through, their movements quick and purposeful as they balance their loads. To deliver a notice for the next shift, or to relay orders from higher authority, a messenger may enter. Voice kept low to avoid disturbing those who rest on their pallets. Before returning to the animals that need constant tending, stable hands sometimes stop briefly to warm themselves, their clothing carrying the distinct smell of hay and horse that mixes with the room's other scents. Brief are these exchanges, shaped by shared routine rather than extended talk that might distract from needed rest or waste the limited time available. In contact with many within the walls, the guard's role places him, though always in passing rather than through sustained connection. From a steward to the gate, where it must be delivered, he may carry a small message, or when extra hands are needed for heavy work, assist in moving a barrel of supplies or salted meat that one man alone cannot manage. As part of life within the enclosed space where all depend on one another, such tasks are accepted, fitting between formal duties without ceremony or expectation of special recognition or thanks. Some off-duty hours are occupied by maintenance in winter, when the cold creates constant need for repair. With oil that must be worked in slowly, a strap that has stiffened and cracked from cold is softened, then worked back and forth until flexible again and safe to use. Before it widens into something that cannot be fixed easily, a tear in wool is mended with careful stitches. Where wear shows from constant friction against metal or wood, the edge of a glove is restitched. Practical and continuous are these repairs, preventing small damage from becoming a greater problem when on watch, where a failure of equipment could mean injury or worse. Without full ease when it comes, rest is taken. On his pallet, with cloak folded under his head for cushioning, a guard may lie back, eyes closed for a short time before the next duty calls. Light during the day is sleep, shaped by nearby sounds and the knowledge that soon the next call will come. Slows is what breath does, but partly aware of cold and of movement in the room, the body remains, never fully releasing into deep rest. Steady and low are sounds within the living space. Cloth rustles as someone adjusts position on their pallet. Once someone coughs, then falls quiet again. In the background, the faint crackle of charcoal from the brazier continues, a constant layer that does not disturb but fills the space where silence might otherwise feel empty and unsettling, is formed by these sounds. In the same manner as elsewhere, food brought into the room during short breaks is eaten, bowls held close to the chest, steam rising into cool air and briefly warming the face. From clothing onto the floor are brushed crumbs, later swept away with rushes when the room is tidied. In small amounts, to avoid frequent trips outside in the cold. Where the privy stands, water is drunk from shared cups. The watch outside is what the rhythm of the room follows. For the wall, when one group leaves, another returns from their shift, in a slow cycle that continues day and night. Pallets empty and fill. From pegs are taken cloaks and replaced by others. Off and on come boots in steady rotation. Without pause through the day and into night, the pattern continues. Escape from winter is not what these quarters offer, only a lessened form of it. Cold is still held by stone. A chill is still carried by air. Yet absent within these walls is wind, and from full exposure the body can ease, allowing muscles to relax and warmth to gather slowly. Though modest, this difference allows strength to return enough for the next period on the wall where the full force of winter will be felt again. Plain and steady within this shared space, relationships among guards and other workers remain. About practical matters are words exchanged. When needed, is assistance given without hesitation. Out is not what any single interaction stands, but together a web of small connections that support daily life inside the castle through the long winter season is formed by them. From single thoughts or spoken declarations, the guard's sense of duty does not form. From repetition it grows, from standing in the same places through changing light and weather, and from the knowledge that in similar positions along the same walls others stand. In winter, quieter and more inward this sense becomes, shaped by the steady demands of cold and time that press constantly. Practical and close to the present as it appears in daily life, belief is. In the routine that places him on the wall at certain hours and brings relief at others, the guard trusts that the stores within the castle will be managed so food continues to come, and that where possible fires will be tended, he trusts. Often are not spoken these expectations, yet behavior is guided by them. By taking his place without delay and holding it steadily through wind and cold. The same pattern for others he supports. Into a narrow path, long hours of watch allow the mind to settle. Widely thoughts do not roam. Along familiar lines they move. The state of clothing and whether repairs are needed. The next meal and what it might contain. The footing near the stair and whether ice has formed. During these stretches, rarely do larger concerns take shape. Them is what the environment itself limits. Little that invites change of focus is given by pale fields, grey sky, and the fixed line of stone parapet that stretches endlessly in both directions. More than deliberate decision, habit shapes response. Closer without conscious planning, the cloak is drawn when the wind shifts. Slightly the head turns, eyes seeking its source when a sound carries from below. From long practice rather than momentary choice, these actions arise. Over time, the guard's steady state becomes this pattern of habit, allowing him to remain alert without strain or exhausting effort. Also, the mind is guided by a sense of place, a known environment where each stone and turn is familiar, is formed by the wall walk, towers, and yard below. Uncertainty is reduced by this familiarity, and a calm, level awareness is supported. Even in winter, when surfaces are altered by snow and flat remains the light, through repeated experience, the underlying structure is known. This inward steadiness deepens during night watch. As most people withdraw to sleep, activity within the castle lessens. From kitchens and workshops, sounds fade. Only occasional footsteps in corridors or the soft call of a watchman. Below the quiet is broken by. More aware of smaller signals, the guard on the wall becomes. Under his own boot, the scrape of ice. Along the parapet, the faint movement of wind that carries no other sound. Vision, but not the task, is changed by darkness. To low light, eyes adjust, seeking contrast rather than detail. What little light the sky provides is reflected by the snow beyond the walls, giving the land a faint glow that outlines shapes without clear edges or distinct features. More slowly now, the guard's gaze moves, allowing time for sight to gather what it can from the dimness. Toward endurance at these hours, belief often turns. An understanding that the night will pass as others have passed, and that to the walls dawn will return light, there is. Not as hope or fear, but as recognition of a pattern. Repeated many times through the seasons, this is framed. Through the quietest hours when cold bites deepest, holding to that pattern supports the guard. To settle as night deepens, the castle itself seems. Lower fires burn, in thinner lines smoke rising. Close and remain closed do doors. Under a layer of frost or snow with its daytime marks softened, the yard lies still. Along the wall, less frequent are footsteps of patrol, spaced to conserve strength while maintaining watch over the dark land. One of the clearest signs of life in the cold air, breathing becomes. In a small cloud that fades into darkness, each exhale marks time. Most clearly, at the center where layers hold it close, the body's warmth is felt. More quickly at night, extremities grow numb, requiring careful attention and occasional movement to maintain feeling in fingers and toes. Level and contained through these hours, the guard's mindset remains. Not a distant idea, but the simple continuation of standing, watching and responding when needed. Duty is. With the quiet of the castle and the stillness of the winter landscape, this steady presence aligns. clouds. Further as the night moves on, sounds thin. For a time, even the wind may ease, in near silence, leaving the wall. Conserving heat, the guard's movements slow, only by breath, by the weight of the spear in hand, and by the faint light along the horizon that will eventually signal morning. The line between one moment and the next softens and is marked. Without clear boundary, night on the wall deepens. Overcast the sky remains, yet from cloud and snow a faint light keeps the land from full darkness. Their edges are lost by shapes beyond the walls, becoming broad areas of pale and shadow that blend into one another. Only as a slightly darker band crossing the open ground does the road that was visible by day now appear. As vertical forms without detail, trees stand, their branches merged into a single mass that shows no individual limb or twig. Slower and more spaced along the wall walk, movement grows. At longer intervals, patrols continue. With care is each step placed, the sound of boot on stone softened by frost that has accumulated through the evening hours. More often against the shoulder, the spear's shaft rests, hands shifting position to keep feeling in the fingers before numbness sets in completely. Thicker in the colder air, breath clouds appear, drifting sideways before fading into the darkness that surrounds everything. Nearly ceased inside the castle, activity has. In the distance, with a dull sound that does not repeat, a final door closes. From the chimneys, smoke thins, rising straight upward where wind has lessened to almost nothing. Undisturbed the yard lies, its surface smooth under a new layer of frost that has formed since evening fell. Left outside, barrels, carts, and tools are shapes without detail, their edges rounded by cold that has settled over everything. Upright, the guard's posture remains, though slightly lower than during the day. Shoulders settle. With less tension, their work. Muscles hold, relying on habit to maintain balance on the uneven stone. In small and careful motions, feet shift, heels lifting and setting down to keep blood moving through limbs that want to stiffen. So they do not disturb footing or draw attention from other posts along the wall. These movements are measured. Farther in the still air, sound carries. Clearly from another post along the wall, a single cough is heard, then gone into silence. As a guard adjusts his grip, the faint clink of metal travels along the stone, reaching ears tuned to such small noises. Beyond the walls, little there is. No cartwheels rumbling over frozen ground, no voices calling through the cold. Only once in a while, thin and brief, a distant animal call reaches the ear, perhaps a fox or night bird. In narrow circles during these hours, the mind moves. On the immediate, attention rests. the line of the parapet stretching away in both directions, the stretch of ground below where nothing moves, the feel of cloth at the neck where cold tries to enter. Far beyond the next relief or the slow approach of morning, thoughts do not extend. From being spent where it is not needed, this narrowing keeps energy. Its strongest point before dawn, cold reaches. Heavier the air feels, pressing more firmly through cloth despite all the layers worn. More frequent flexing is required by fingers. In boots, toes press downward, seeking warmth from motion, since stillness brings only deepening chill. By drawing heat inward, the body responds, leaving cheeks and nose more numb than earlier in the night. Noted and answered with small adjustments, the same as before, but more often now. These changes are a steady presence beneath all of this. The castle walls hold, dark and solid. Stone forms a line that does not shift with light or weather, remaining constant through all seasons. A sense of firmness that contrasts with the open land beyond is provided by leaning lightly against it. Under the glove, the parapet edge, cold and unyielding, marks the boundary between guarded space and the fields outside that stretch away into dimness. Along the horizon, gradually, a subtle change appears. Near one edge slightly, the grey of the sky lifts, becoming thinner and less dense. Warmth this does not bring, only a faint increase in light that allows the eye to distinguish more. It is reflected by snow beyond the walls, and a little more from the sky the land separates. Clearer again becomes the road's line, showing as a darker thread through the pale field. To ease with this light, the sense of night begins, though yet returned activity has not. Slow and even, the guard's breathing remains. In familiar balance, the spear rests, its weight distributed in a way the body knows without thought. Gently, as the wind resumes a mild flow across the wall, cloak edges stir. Sudden, nothing occurs. In the same gradual manner as the day before, the transition from deep night to early morning unfolds, measured and steady. A first sound of movement returns inside the castle. In a corridor, a distant footstep, then quiet again as whoever walks pauses or enters a room. As a fire is stirred back to life, a small thread of smoke thickens from one chimney. Faint and spaced, these signs are, marking the approach of another cycle without breaking the stillness that has held through the darkest hours. At his post through this change, the guard remains. Against the pale sky, his figure outlined stands as it has through the hours before, unmoving except for the small, necessary shifts. The cold, the stone, and the quiet light shape the final stretch of the watch that will soon end. Few are movements, steady is breath. Outward, across the slowly brightening land, gaze is directed, watching for anything that might disturb the emptiness. Nearer as morning draws, their muted tones are held by the wall, the yard, and the fields beyond. To stone, frost clings in delicate patterns. Smooth snow lies, unmarked by any passage. In a low and even flow, air moves, carrying neither warmth nor strong scent. Within this setting continues the God's presence, in pace unchanged, a steady part of the castle's outer line, as without sharp boundary or conclusion. The night gives way to another winter day that will bring the same cold, the same watch, the same patient endurance. From the towers nearby, another guard may be glimpsed shifting stance, a dark shape against slightly lighter stone. No word passes between posts at this hour. Communication is not needed. The knowledge that others stand at their places along the wall is enough. In this shared stillness, each maintains his section, and together the line holds unbroken around the castle's perimeter. The parapet's stone, touched briefly by a gloved hand, feels like iron in its coldness. Sensation barely passes through the leather, yet the contact confirms the wall's presence. Solid and unchanging it remains, while everything else, the light, the air, the guard's own strength, shifts gradually through the hours. This constancy provides an anchor for the mind that might otherwise drift too far during the long, quiet darkness. Below, in the ditch that surrounds part of the wall, snow has filled in the lowest areas completely. What was once a clear defensive line now appears as a gentle slope, softened and obscured. Only here and there do dark reeds protrude, marking where water still flows beneath the ice and snow. These small signs of what lies hidden beneath the winter's cover are noted and remembered, part of the knowledge that builds over many watches. The eastern horizon, where the change began, continues to lighten by degrees so small that no single moment marks the difference. Only by looking away and then back does the guard notice that grey has become slightly less dark. The stars, if they were visible through the cloud, would be fading now. But the overcast holds, and the transition happens without that familiar marker of dawn's true arrival. Somewhere within the castle, a dog barks once, the sound carrying clearly in the cold air. Then silence returns. The animal has likely been let out into the yard for a moment before being called back inside, where warmth remains from the night's banked fires. Such sounds, though brief, mark the beginning of the castle's waking, the first stirrings of another day's routine that will soon involve many voices, many footsteps, many tasks that fill the hours with purpose and motion. The guard's cloak, stiff now with cold, and the moisture from his own breath that has frozen along its edges moves less freely than when the watch began. It has become almost like another layer of armor, rigid and heavy, but still providing the essential barrier against wind that would otherwise strip away what little warmth remains. Beneath it, the layered wool and linen trap pockets of air heated by the body, and this trapped warmth is what sustains through the coldest hours. A faint creaking sound comes from somewhere along the wall, wood contracting in the cold perhaps, or ice shifting on stone. These noises are part of the night's language, familiar and expected. They do not signal danger or require investigation. They are simply the castle settling, adjusting to the temperature that has dropped steadily since the sun disappeared many hours ago. The wait for relief becomes more present in the mind as the light increases. Not urgently, but with a steady awareness that the time approaches when another will climb the stair and take this position. The thought brings neither particular relief nor impatience. It is simply the next part of the pattern, as inevitable as the sunrise that will eventually break through or remain hidden behind the winter clouds. Until that moment comes, the stance holds, the watch continues, and the guard remains as he has remained, a fixed point in the slow turning of the winter night toward morning. Wars, heroes, or the major events highlighted in history books were not what we followed in this video. Instead, a quieter truth about how a medieval castle actually remained secure was what we observed. The daily life of an ordinary castle guard serving in winter. Not an adventure, but a system of endurance was what we saw. The guard's main struggle from the first moments of the day to the quietest hours of night was not an outside enemy, but the cold stone creeping upward from his feet, the unrelenting pressure of the wind, and the physical weight of standing still for hours. In this world, not action, but the ability to remain in place, to look at the same landscape again and again, without letting attention fade, was what duty often meant. Something important, this shows us, not by constant conflict, but by people capable of withstanding monotony and repetition. Castles were often protected, more on routine than on dramatic moments, was security built. The same principle was followed by life inside the castle. Hierarchy there was, but not shouting commanders, rather quietly passed instructions, established habits, and everyone knowing their place. Not pleasure, but fuel was food. A tool that brought the body back into working condition was hot soup. Less about rest and more about preparing to return to the cold were a few minutes near a fire. Tight were living spaces, brief were conversations, simple and practical were relationships, because the same conditions everyone was resisting. At night, the task did not lessen. As the world grew silent, even more abstract the guard's duty became. Visibility dropped, sounds thinned out, but the essential requirement stayed: to be there. Here lies the central message of the video. Not moments of heroism, but people who endured cold, fatigue, and repetition day after day was what kept a medieval castle functioning. Not a glorious life, but a necessary one it was. Not dramatic, but heavy. Beneath the noise of history, that quiet layer we saw. A system, a sense of security, built on people who stood still for hours at a time.